pleasure to talk with you today. I appreciate Workforce inviting me to discuss a topic I am really passionate about. It's such a pleasure to have a conversation with my colleagues in HR. For our time together, I'd like to focus very specifically on one portion of the hiring process. This flows really nicely. Good job programming the schedule. Todd talked about start to finish and the important aspects of recruiting. I'd like to take us deep into one particular area of the hiring process, and that's the use of assessments. At Prudential Financial, for 138 years, we've helped employees grow and develop, individuals, institutions grow and protect their wealth. So 138 years. For 7 years, I've been at Prudential leading the recruitment function. I have responsibility for hiring the company's most important asset, its talent, across the organization. And as an IO psychologist that got keys to the recruiting process, I'm able to apply the science I'm so passionate about to the way we hire the company. But before I get started down that storyline, let's just be real with each other for a minute. Assessments get a bad rap. You're already scared of me. You're not going to talk to me at the recruiting, at the networking reception. I've admitted that I'm a psychologist. That's the first mistake. You'll run away. Secondly, I've told you that I love assessments and tests. And often they're met with great skepticism. And so what do I mean by assessment or test? Let me just make sure we're all grounded in this. Those pesky questionnaires that we ask our applicants to complete, those strange questions that ask them about their styles, their motivations, call it a psychological analysis, a quiz. I like to use assessment. It makes it seem a little softer than the word test. But when I introduce the concept to our executives as we're talking strategies for how we attract top talent into the organization, I'm often met with great skepticism. It's kind of two opposing opinions, either individuals, executives that have had great success using assessment tools. They often tested well themselves. I find that your own performance on a test one day, how well you did on the SAT, is a very strong predictor of how well you're going to like my presentation. You did poorly, you consider yourself a bad test taker, you really hate me, and I become the enemy very quickly. So what are some of the common objections that we get to assessments? So when we're talking about our hiring process and the strategies we use to acquire talent, injecting science into the art of hiring, injecting data to drive our decisions. Assessments scare candidates away. I hear assessments are illegal or risky. Are there any attorneys in the room? Good. Stay out of my business. We're going to revisit these. Just give me a handful of your top performers. I'll slap in a test that'll profile your stars this afternoon. I've heard that a million times from vendors and consultants that have an assessment. Assessments are easy to fake. I can tell you anything you want to know. I can fake my answer. Candidates aren't honest on assessments. All personality instruments, they're the same. Oh, I've taken one of those before. I used those once before. Assessments can be used for all positions. One size fits all. I got this test. Use it. Let's use it this afternoon for any position. Or those consultants that say assessments are valid. I have a glossy brochure that proves it. You can use it this afternoon. Misperceptions and skepticisms really surround the practice of assessments. And I assert that each one of these are false. We found in our practices at Prudential the use of assessment tools has transformed the quality of our workforce. We found two key opportunities for injecting science into the art of hiring. The earliest stages of the hiring process, and then the late stages as we're selecting amongst our finalists. At Prudential, we have about, this week, we're in September, 5,000 people will want a job at Prudential this week. Next week, another 5,000 people are going to want a job at Prudential. The week after, another 5,000. Every single week, these applications keep coming in, keeping my people busy. We don't have the opportunity, let's be real with each other, to review these resumes At the earliest stages of our hiring process is where the greatest opportunity for us to make a major mistake is. So what do we do? What do we do when we're looking at those 5,000 applicants? I have 25 recruiters to review those 5,000 applicants. We spend about 45 seconds. Are we being recorded? Very thoroughly reviewing all basic qualifications to the application to ensure consistent standards across the entire process. Seriously, we're looking at a resume and making a quick judgment call. Now, my recruiters are incredibly trained. They're professional. They've been doing this longer than I've been working or alive. And they make quick, snap judgments based on one of the most inaccurate documents we create, right? A resume. Injecting data using an assessment tool at the initial point of application has allowed us to use standardized, consistent measurement to give all candidates equal consideration. Now, at Prudential, we take great rigor in doing our process. As an IO psychologist, I apply stringent standards to the use of our assessment tools. We conducted rigorous analysis within the organization and within the external applicant population, demonstrating that the use of the assessment tool at the earliest stages of the hiring process, 25 simple questions, online, automated, efficient process, has improved the performance of our workforce by 12%. 12%. Silver bullet? No. Who would take a 12% lift in your performance? Based on an automated, low-maintenance assessment tool that gives us that data to make our hiring decisions. Now, the second place in our hiring process we've found the opportunity to use assessment data to inject that science is at the latest stages. When we're selecting amongst finalists, we use the opportunity to take them through in-depth assessments of their cognitive horsepower, their personality styles, their motivations, their tendencies under stress. Using that data with our finalist population enables us to land more quickly and with greater confidence on our hire. And then, of course, Todd, you'd love to see the offer background drug test. Yes, really important part of that process. All right, so let's look at these common objections. Candidates view companies that use assessment tools favorably. Extensive research has been done, and it shows that organizations that take hiring seriously, that put candidates through a rigorous but standardized and fair process, are perceived more favorably than organizations that have low standards. It's absolutely a myth that assessments will turn candidates away. Well-positioned and well-communicated, a candidate appreciates the opportunity to show their talent. Assessments are, in fact, worthwhile and drive solid decision-making. So the introduction of these assessment tools in our organization has allowed us to make higher quality hiring decisions. Again, is it a silver bullet? No. But who wouldn't take additional data to make a great, critical hiring decision? But they come with strings attached. And unfortunately, you can't just slap an assessment tool in place. I wish. No, I don't wish, because I wouldn't have a profession if you could do that. So luckily, it takes a lot of rigor and research. And so in order to use an assessment tool most effectively, it requires validation research. And that's just hard. At the end of the day, there's ways to streamline it and to do it as simply as possible, but you just can't grab a handful of your superstar sales guys, your New York guy and your New Jersey guy, and profile them. I wish it was easier than that. You have to take a large sample size, conduct deep data analysis, use statistics to demonstrate that your assessment actually works for you. They're not as easy to fake as you'd think. Assessment tools are quite sophisticated, well-designed ones. And they do tell us the truth. It's amazing. If you've done interviews, the same premise holds true. It's amazing what people will admit to, isn't it? They'll tell you the truth if you just ask them and you get quiet. You just listen. Assessment tools hold true. We ask questions in assessment tools that when we design them, we think, no one in the world would admit to stealing office supplies. About 12% of the population admits when they're trying to get a job that they will steal office supplies. I'm like, great, thank you very much, X. Automate that, get you out. They're not as easy to think, and individuals tell the truth more honestly. We do tend to present ourselves in a favorable light, but all boats really rise with the tide. There is something called social desirability. Just like in an interview, you try your best to give your best answer. You try to inflate your scores on an assessment. It doesn't impact our ability to be able to demonstrate what your true behavioral profile is. Assessments really vary widely in their rigor, in their value, in their application. And I think that's the root of a lot of the skepticism. People have been burnt by poorly designed instruments, poorly communicated processes where the candidates don't quite understand the intention behind the assessment, what the data is going to be used for. This is especially true if we start thinking about testing or assessing our own employees that already work here. So from a hiring process, think about we're often comparing external candidates and internals. There's a whole lot of skepticism and concern when you're asking your own employees to complete assessments. So it's incredibly important that we provide as much transparency to those candidates. You can always be a bit more transparent with your own employees than you can with the external population. They have to be designed for the needs of the business role. And so as HR professionals, this is so cliche, but absolutely true. We have to know the business drivers. We have to know our business strategy. What type of performance are we looking for? What kind of profile is necessary for the position? That's why it's so important that we do that upfront research to ensure the assessment tools we're using are actually measuring the indicators of success for a particular position. What's our last one? Let's see. And what was it validated for and how was it validated? So this is the truth side of that misperception that if an organization or a consultant has a glossy brochure that says your assessment was validated and you can just slop it in place, your best defense to overcome that misperception is to ask really targeted questions. Make sure you understand how that assessment tool, or if someone within your organization is trying to implement an assessment tool for your population of employees, make sure you ask how it was validated, who it was validated with, what kind of data was captured, and what results did it demonstrate. Well-designed, I assert that assessment tools can improve the quality of our workforce. And as HR professionals, it's our responsibility to understand the science behind assessment tools so that we can better advocate for their use, so that we can better overcome the skepticism and objections so often offered when the topic of assessment comes up. You can expect to find 3 real gains from the introduction or use of assessment tools in your organization. Improving the quality of hires. So really that's what it's all about at the end of the day. All of the work we do to automate our process, to brand our organization, to attract top talent is all to the end of introducing the best and highest quality talent we possibly can into our organizations. Promotes a fair experience. We haven't been able to touch on this, and I don't have too much time to go into it, but ensuring that candidates are given a fair shake in the hiring process. I often get asked what keeps me up at night. It's not making the mistakes of hiring someone bad. It's missing out on incredible talent that I know day in and day out we pass right over because perhaps their resume didn't look exactly the same. Perhaps the manager, she had some biases when she was conducting her interview. Perhaps the recruiter wasn't on the same page as the hiring manager. Ensuring that we allow candidates to shine in the hiring process, giving them all a fair shake at saying what their value is, saying what they're capable of. The introduction of assessment data is an additional point for that person to differentiate themselves. In delivering process efficiency, it's a little counterintuitive. So you often think I'm introducing a new step in my hiring process. If we think today we're hiring and we just do interviews at Starbucks, and if you played lacrosse, then you got to be a leader and we'll all be fine, right? So if we talk about introducing an assessment into the process, it's possible you'd think it's going to slow things down. We need to get this person on board quickly. Our experience is the opposite. We've found that managers that use assessment tools interview the candidates less. I'm not sure what it's like at your organization. In financial services, we tend to be highly collaborative, and bringing candidates in for 4 and 5 rounds of interviews with 10 people a day is not uncommon. Again, are we being recorded? Am I admitting to this? We find that managers that use assessment tools have greater confidence in their hiring decision. It can unstall an indecisive hiring manager. So although we're asking the candidates to complete an additional process, it can move that process forward more quickly, and we land with candidates with greater confidence. And John is not up yet. So with that, I hope that you learned a little bit about assessment tools. Certainly as HR professionals, I'm certain you've had great experience with them yourselves. I'd love to hear some other objections you've faced within your organizations during the networking if you're not scared of me. I'm not going to try and counsel you. I don't read minds. And I hope that you will have the courage and insight to understand assessment tools a little bit better and encourage your organization to consider adopting them.